Okay, so reaction video to Shattered Glass. It's based off of a true story, and my reaction is that this is very much a 90s movie. I already have a degree in communication studies, and I really love learning about it, but it was very disheartening the more I learned about it. And the deeper you go into the degree, the deeper you realize how biased essentially every single news media outlet is. We use fear to keep people watching TV, and marketing. It's big part of it's like how do we get people addicted to something to keep watching. So it's interesting because I liked my education, but I think it's really outdated because it's mostly made for back when journalism meant something very different to what it does now. Obviously, with the rise of internet, it's starting to die out, and in the movie, it's a huge deal that that Eric Glass, I think it's Eric Glass, Stephen Glass, my apologies, that Stephen Glass lied, right? He makes up pretty much every single story, fake news before that was such a big term. I think it's just a little frustrating to watch because it is nice to think back to when that was such a big deal to lie or embellish on stories or make not even just embellish but completely make up something. Um, I think it's also I kind of saw myself a little bit in the Caitlyn character, just like wanting to see the best in people when instead of seeing reality sometimes. But you would think as a journalist she would be able to pull back on that. And I do like the actress a lot, but I think that definitely makes the character not super likable. Yeah, I got 3 minutes left. I got a lot. Should have a lot to say. I'm not that surprised. I do like the movie. I kind of thought that Chuck, is it Chuck or Mike, the main antagonist, if you can say that, even though our protagonist is really more the antagonist. I thought Chuck was going to be the bad guy because the only other thing I saw him in was Garden State, Zach Braff's movie, where he is just a stoner and like hasn't left home and is like a loser, that kind of stereotype. And then he also is a grave robber because he buries bodies for a living. And there's a scene where you see that he steals from people. He steals their jewelry. So I really like that they didn't make his character one dimensional. They actually built on the depth. Like he takes over the other guy, I think Hank was his name, the original editor's job. And it's really easy to think, oh, what a selfish asshole. Like if he just stood his guard, that kept his, if he just like fought back a little bit, then the owner of the news company wouldn't have fired him, and that guy would still have his job. But then the next scene is him going home to his family, and everyone else there is really young. Like Steven isn't lying to support his family. He's not in some financial dire situation. I think that would have been interesting, but I get that this movie is based off of real life, so it's not written for likability because it's reality. But I think like if they were just going like this is kind of based off a true story and they're just really expanding beyond that and doing the classic based on a true story arc, it would have been interesting if you saw that he like morally really struggled with this because he does want to be a good journalist and like he does have the imposter syndrome. Like, is he a true journalist because he's not going through it correctly? But you don't see any of that. He seems to just not care. It seems like he just wants to be liked, which is very interesting because the guy directed the movie and had a big part in it. So I guess he's self-aware, but it also like kind of puts him in a likable light in certain ways, like especially with how it begins with him in the high school, like talking and everyone's so into him. And then it's also very weird, in my opinion, that he's my age. He's 23 or he's 24, I think. And they have him like very obviously checking out the high school girl who doesn't even look like she's she doesn't look like a mid 20-year-old girl playing a high schooler. Like she actually looks like a child. So I thought that was very interesting that the guy who directed this movie kind of insinuated that he's a pedophile, like, or at least into kids. Not that he's acted on it, but still gross and like really weird decision on how to portray yourself. Um, I don't know. The movie doesn't put him in a good light, so I find it really interesting that he was part of that. I think it would be interesting if like there was an end credit scene and it was a live video of like the actual Stephen Glass being like, "Yeah, I know this wasn't great," or "I made this movie because I want to clear my name in this that way," or I don't know. It's just something to make him actually likable because I really like I can be empathetic to a fault, but he was just not likable, you know? Maybe it's because I'm really big on honesty, but I don't know. So I think the movie is interesting because you don't root for the person that you're meant to root for. And the guy wrote the story about himself and put him in a poor light. And the guy you think is gonna be a jerk, the boss, was actually, just a man trying to defend for his family. And he did try to work with Steven. He wasn't trying to be malicious and like tried to give him a warning and give him many chances to come clear. And I think my favorite part of the movie was that the boss was able to stand up for himself when Steven was emotionally manipulating him after he got found out about his brother being the guy on the phone. And he said, I need you to drive me to the airport right now. The guy's like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah, I don't know what I will do to myself otherwise." And he said, "Well, take a minute, take as long as you need, and then once you feel emotionally safe, then you can leave. I'm not driving you to the airport." So I think the movie, I don't want to say the movie is like a great example of ethics and journalism and like the standards and everything, because that's gone. That is completely gone. The whole process in the movie, where I know this is now going over, but I'm coming to the end. Um, but the whole process in the movie where they would go through like 3 or 4 different checkpoints to validate a story, I don't think that's a thing anymore. I remember even one of my uh, professors at University of San Diego, and he used to work for the San Diego Tribune, but of course now it's all different. Um, Now it's just about like who can get the story out there the quickest, and we definitely saw that with the first 2016 election. And that was like CNN, every single media outlet had to constantly like be like, actually we're wrong about this and wrong about that. So I think the movie had that message more when it came out in the 90s. Like that message was more relevant to society. And for me personally, the message I found the most relevant was just sticking to your guns about something and how dangerous it is when you do things out of being wanting to be likable versus out of your own moral compass. And that was my opinion of Stephen Glass. Also very weird to make yourself seem like you like high school kids. I would like to know more about that. Why?